So, hello, judges, directors, fellow innovates, and everyone else who's here. I'm Tara. I'm a 15-year-old synthetic biology enthusiast, and I'm here to talk to you about our moonshot project, BeeBloomz, today. So, we all eat food. It's pretty obvious. It's a basic human necessity. I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now if I hadn't been eating food for my whole life. And food comes to fruition through the agriculture industry. And the agriculture industry is so huge, it contributes over $1 trillion to the US GDP in a single year. But there's a really big problem. 45.5% of the workers that make fruit and vegetable production in agriculture possible are dying every single year. It's crazy to me that no one is solving this problem at a mass scale. And because the bees are dying, we are losing so much fruit yield and possible pollination. 80% of the world's pollination is carried out by bees. Although there are other pollinators, bees are the most efficient as they can pollinate up to 300 million flowers in a single day. That's 5,000 per bee. And if we lose the bees, that will be so much pollination lost. And because flowers need pollination to grow at all, that'll be a massive economic impact. Because of this, bees are worth $18 billion to the US economy every single year in food production. And that's why it's very important to solve the problem of their death. Now, their death has been linked to three major root causes, among others: pesticides, poor nutrition, and parasites. We have decided to solve poor nutrition and parasites because they are solvable main causes. Now, when we looked into poor nutrition, we talked to some beekeepers, and they definitely see some issues within the monoculture agriculture space with poor nutrition because the bees are only getting one type of pollen, and they need multiple types of pollen to fulfill their full dietary needs. In terms of parasites, there's a varroa mite, which is a type of parasite that lives on a bee, and this is a massive problem for farmers and beekeepers because these varroa mites can carry viruses such as the deformed wing virus, which can affect bees' ability to pollinate, and these parasites can multiply very quickly. In terms of current solutions for these problems, bee feed is one solution that attempts to solve the poor nutrition problem, and the problem is it doesn't have the same composition as natural pollen, and bees don't really like it as much. In terms of parasites, farmers go in and manually count the amount of mites that are within their hive by scanning manually every time they want to check. And this is such a bad thing. Everyone is putting bandages on the symptoms rather than solving the root causes. And that's why we have created BeeBloomz. We are saving pollination one synthetic flower at a time. Now, to understand our solution fully, you need to understand how natural pollination works. When a bee visits a flower, it's really visiting the nectary, which is a place in the flower near the base where nectar is generated. When they go to the nectary, their legs brush on the anthers, which have pollen on them, and as they move from flower to flower, that pollen drops into the stigma and fertilizes the next flower, which allows fruit to later grow. Our solution attempts to emulate that natural composition of a flower. As you can see, there's a nectar hole where bees drink, a pollen ring, and some 3D printed petals, as well as ways for the pollen and nectar to be brought up through actuators. Now, you might be thinking, where are we even getting all of this pollen from? We're going to create synthetic pollen using meristematic cells. Meristematic cells are a type of stem cell that is found within the stem and roots of a plant. They're undifferentiated. So, for example, within humans, we have hair cells, eye cells, skin cells. But stem cells have no specific type, and they can be grown into any type of cell you want them to be. First of all, we're going to extract those stem cells from the roots and stems of each plant that we want to target. Then we're going to gene edit them so that they contain all of the different coding of genes to allow for all the different nutrients that are needed within the pollen to be in this cell. Then we're going to produce these stem cells on a mass scale, and then we're going to expose them to environmental factors that will differentiate them into pollen cells that are nutritious for the bees. Then we're going to deliver these from the lab to the farms that use BeeBloomz. Now, I might be thinking, what's the composition of this BeeBloomz device? Well, you've got the ESP32 camera on top that will take pictures of bees as they come into the flowers. There are actuators that bring pollen and nectar up through tubes. So first of all, when a bee visits a flower, a photo is taken of it using this ESP32 camera, which is a small, cheap camera that we'll put on the petal. Then we'll run object detection on that picture to detect any existing varroa mites. Then nectar and pollen will be released, which is what we made with the meristematic stem cells, with the use of actuators. After talking to an expert in IoT and AI, we've determined that this technical solution could actually work. Your last question might have to do with the cost of this. How expensive is it for farmers and beekeepers to actually implement our BeeBloomz? Well, actually, it's only about $235 per BeeBloom. That means that a farmer or beekeeper could buy 5 of these for only about $1,000. And to improve bee health and optimize pollination, it's absolutely worth it. The main place that we will want to implement these to start out is California, USA, because strawberries are the second most popular fruit in the US, and California grows 90% of them. So by solving the pollination in California, we will optimize strawberry growth and revolutionize pollination. So by revolutionizing pollination and fixing the problems to do with bee death, we will improve fruit yields, we will save the health of bees, and revolutionize agriculture. And I give a very big thank you to my team, Manal, Fatima, and Shaya, for being the best moonshot team.